friends. Yesterday we learnt about social construct of reality, which is a part of communication theory subject. Today we are going to talk about the introduction to measures of central tendency, which comes in CRM, right? It's a concept that talks about how, when we get quantitative data, after we conduct a survey, when we put all the numbers together, we get certain amount of data, right? And considering we are in social sciences, like I told you earlier in communication theories classes, we don't have fixed numbers, right? Like the boiling point of water is this, or the heat at which an iron rod melts is exactly this, which remains constant, which varies with temperature, weather conditions, etc. But ultimately it remains constant. Unlike physical sciences, in social sciences, we have the disadvantage of having varied data, right? So in social sciences research, what do? We try and get these varied data, which is different on many different levels, and try and arrive at that one particular value, that one number that defines this distribution of data. For example, one person has a value of 20, another person has a value of 25, another person has a value of 30. For the same question it administered, because we are in a subjective field, we try and come to that one point that puts 25, 30, 35 together and give us one number that makes us be able to define these numbers in such a way that we can explain the phenomena that we are studying. This process of coming at that one value is called measures of central tendency. Measures of central tendency. What is measures of central tendency? It is to arrive at that one value that gives us a number x, right? A particular number x that kind of describes the data that we are studying. We have certain amount of data gathered. It's all haphazard. It's all different varying data. We use different methods that we have in statistics, which is a huge field, which is a subject in itself, which is why I want you all to, if possible, read up on your own a little bit, because one of the questions that they might ask you is to give us the differences between the three different types of measures of central tendency. They can ask you to define it, they can ask you to describe it, ask you to give examples, but I'm sure there's not going to be any calculation for you all this time, right? So it describes the data, this one number, of all the things that we have studied, the subjective factors that we have studied, right? So what is it? It is the central position that makes us be able to generalize. So this one number x gives us a central position of all the data that we have gathered that helps us generalize a certain phenomena to a bigger population. That is, the number of people who like a particular TV program can be generalized to a population. We can't say the number of people who like this particular program is different from this person to that person. That's not how research works. So we have to be able to say the number of people in Bangalore who like this particular TV program. We have to give them one number, right? And that number has to be applicable to every human being in Bangalore. So we get the data for a sample, and that sample data is then put through the test of measures of central tendency, and we arrive at the number x, and that x will be able to define what is called the generalizable value, right? So we have three different types: mean, median, and mode, right? Three popular types of measures of central tendency. These are widely used. Let's look at each one of them and try and understand how they work. They're very simple, don't get too confused, just stay with me and you'll understand. Mean is the average. Mean is also called the average, but we like to call it mean in statistics. Average for a layman to understand what it's all about, right? So what is mean? Sigma x by n, right? Mean is also denoted by a mu, which looks like this, or an x bar. X bar means the average, mu means the average, sigma is the sum total, right? So if I have conducted my test on 5 students, because I want to generalize this to a population of 30 students, 5 students give me 5 values, A, B, C, D and E. What is the mean? I just take A plus B plus C plus D plus E divided by the number of people, 5, which gives me the average, right? So sigma is the sum total and n is the number of people to arrive at the mean. Thus I get the average. It includes, one advantage of doing the mean method is that it includes all the values that we are studying. If we have conducted the test on 10 or 15 people, it takes into consideration all 10 people or all 15 people in order to arrive at the mean, right? And this average looks at taking all of the values in order to arrive at that one central tendency. However, it does not include outliners. What is an outliner? Extremes. There are certain times when all of them are revolving around 20, 25, whereas this one or two people suddenly have a value of 40 or 50 or 90 or 100, like that extreme. It does not consider that. Okay? There is no way in which you can look at that and say, oh, this is an outliner. When you look at the final data, that is your X, it will just be a total of the 100 plus 90 plus 20, 20, 20, 20. That still is mean. So that is one disadvantage. And it does not take into consideration skewed distribution. Skewed distribution is just like an outliner, but when you're trying to understand skewed distribution, it looks at an extreme difference between two categories. This is two categories. Skewed is two categories, whereas outliner is a single category. What is a median? Median is the middle. I try to draw a road, it does not look like a road. And on a road you have the median, that is the divider. So vehicles go like this in one direction and the other side they go in other direction. That is the middle, the center, right? So calculating median is the easiest because you don't necessarily have to know like basic math. So I just put I've taken this example to explain median to you all. I have 5 people that I have conducted my test on, right? Or 6 people, A, B, C, D, E, and F, and all of their values are put here: 20, 22, 35, 16, 12, and 5. So I have 6 values. How do I get the median? I take these, I first rearrange this in an ascending order: 5, 12, 16, 20, 22, 35. So I've rearranged it from smallest to biggest number. I take these two out, I take these two out and come to the central numbers, that is 16 and 20, and then take an average of these two, that is 16 plus 20 divided by 2. What does that give me? The median of that particular point. It's easier if there is no sixth value, because it's an odd number then. So what is my median in this case? So I take off 35 and I have just 5 values here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My median is the center number, 16. I don't even have to calculate it. There's no addition, there's no subtraction. I just take these two out and the central value 16 will be my median. So the median is defined as the exact center. It's also called the direct average. So there's no calculation, there's just recognition of that particular number, that particular value X. That is the median, and the final measure of central tendency that we are going to learn is the mode, right? Mode is also called the frequency method. It's also called the most frequent data. Applicable for categorical data, that is, I have given you an example here. When I move to the example, you'll understand what categorical data means. And it is also applicable in cases of repeated tests. We conduct tests over a period of time, or we conduct tests for different samples from the same population in order to achieve that one particular sort of a generalizable number. That's the concept of repeated tests that are repeated time and again. And in case of really high values, that is when values are extremely high and we don't really have to run into the whole concept of mathematics. And what mean and mode fail to do, skewed distribution, that is extreme variances, it takes into consideration, skewed distribution. So how does mode work? This graph will explain it to you. It is the most frequent number or most frequent value basically. On this graph, if you can see, on the x-axis we have number of people. On the y-axis we have the mode of transport that these number of people have chosen, right? In a city like Bangalore, let's say this is what the graph looks. I've plotted a graph on which I have number of people that I have spoken to, and I've asked people, what is your preferred mode of transport? And I take numbers and then I put bike, car, bus and an auto, right? And then I plot on the y-axis the mode of transport, that is these 4 different types. Here my number of people who take bike is low and auto is also the same, and the number of people who take bus is a little more than auto, bus and bike, whereas the highest is the car, right? So the frequency of the number of people taking the car is huge. The frequency of my test is huge. So the number of people who take a car is the highest. So my my mode is this number, and I have to categorically tell this value is applicable to the number of people taking car. So basically that's the idea of the measures of central tendency: mean, median, mode. Mean is the average, median is the center, that is the middle, and mode is the most frequent data, right? Please just see if you guys can read up on characteristics, different features of each type, that is your MMM, mean, median, mode. Or see if you guys can figure out the differences between each of these types, and see if you guys can make sense of how this can be fit into the concept of subjective interpretation of data. Thank you. Any doubts, again, in the comment section. And if you like the video, please subscribe to my channel. Yay!